Hey guys, so I forgot to film the little intro part for this video, but basically this vlog is going to go over the last week of the month, because it's the 23rd today, and I'm just going to try and finish off as much as I can this month. So I started reading the Unity game by Lian Liao. Read the one Behind the Waterfall. Not a genre I typically read, it's literary fiction. I ended up really enjoying it. The author was very kind to send me a signed copy of the Unity game. So that's what I'm reading at the minute, and I have started a new manga series in Tokyo Ghoul. So I'm going to crack on with reading that, and I will check in a bit. I'm 10% in to the Unity game, and it actually makes a lot more sense this time around, knowing it's a metaphysical thriller. So essentially we're following three characters. We've got David, who's a New York banker that wants to get, to the top. He wants to be one of the big shots and make millions. But he's not quite right upstairs. Then we have Alistair, or Alistair, however you want to pronounce it, who's, a lawyer and an academic, very smart man, and he dies. And basically he's a wandering spirit, and he gets taken to a place called the Library of Records, where the lives of people are recorded, not just their current life, but all the lives they've lived. So it introduces this idea of reincarnation and building up your knowledge throughout your lives. And when you enter the Hall of Records, you can read your book, which contains all of your lives, and there are everyone else's. We learn in some of these lives you aren't human. So we have other beings. One of these beings is, I don't know how to pronounce the name, so I'm going to pronounce it how it sounds in my head, which is Naubok, who is not human. We don't know what they are. They're just referred to as being. And it's starting to learn about their culture and stuff like that, but those sections are still pretty confusing, and I think they're not going to make sense until much later on in the book. But Alistair and David's perspective are both really interesting to follow. I personally really like Alistair. He's an academic, very much focused on the obtaining of knowledge. He loves to read, man after my own heart a little bit. David comes across as very cocky, the place where he works, he looks at all the other people like him and doesn't see any worth in them and thinks really negative things about them. And then the people who, were born privileged, he's like, oh, well, there's no point even trying to go up against them because I'm never going to win that game, but against all these regular people, I'm the absolute best. So right now we've just kind of been introduced to our characters, their states of mind and things like that. And I don't, like, I got up to like halfway before, but I don't remember much. So yeah, right now it's just introductions, setting up character relationships, and I'm just going to see where it goes from there. So I'll check back in with you probably when I get to about the quarter mark, so I'll check in a bit. I'm now a quarter of the way through the Unity game. It's making a lot more sense this time around. Plus, I think I've got more into like hard sci-fi, so wrapping my mind around these kind of themes and is a lot easier for me. But basically, we've got our three characters, and we're starting to see threads of how their storylines are going to intertwine. So obviously we've got Nelbok, who's the, I hesitate to use the word alien, but other non-human being. Basically because of their role on their planet, which is an energy channeler, they have a significantly shorter lifespan than others. And basically it's going to die pretty soon, and the only way to prevent that is by going on a ship and travelling around space. And you know, Nelbok decides, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Alistair is currently in the Library of Records going over his lives, and has the chance to review, you know, not just his wife's life, but a lot of other people's, famous people's lives. And we've got David. David is the most interesting character. Basically, he thinks he got screwed out of his bonus as a banker. Ends up going to visit his parents up in Canada for the weekend. But on the drive there, he experiences something really odd. So he sees this bright flash of light in the sky, which kind of blinds him a little bit. And then he sees this huge owl, like 10 times bigger than any owl has a right to be. And, you know, it flies off, he thinks nothing of it and continues on his way, and he's, you know, getting hungry, so he decides to stop for some food. And he gets this diner, it says it shuts at 11 p.m, and he's like, oh great, and then he realises it's closed. And when he checks his watch and his phone for the time, it says that it's pretty close to midnight. But when he saw this flash, it was 4 in the afternoon. So he's lost 7 hours of time and he doesn't know how, basically. So if I remember correctly, that flash has something to do with Nelbok. But I'm not sure how Alistair is going to play into everything, because he is dead. He's a spirit, so he might be watching some of these events or events from past life that kind of repeat themselves. I'm not sure. But yeah, because it's pretty short, I'll probably update you again at the halfway mark and give you my thoughts on it. I also, when I put this down the other night, I did read the first volume of Tokyo Ghoul. It was cool, action-packed. The pacing was a bit weird, but we do get introduced to some key characters. So obviously Kaneki, Hide, and Toka. We get introduced to those three. We also get introduced to Rize, and I was always under the impression that Rize bit Kaneki, which is how he became a ghoul, but that isn't the case. Rize does bite Kaneki, intending to eat him, and someone turns up and kills Rize, essentially saving Kaneki's life. So he ends up going to the hospital, and he needs a dual kidney transplant. So the doctors, unaware that Rize is a ghoul because they do look pretty much human, give Kaneki Rize's kidneys, which turns Kaneki into like a half ghoul. He's really struggling because we obviously know that ghouls can't get nutrition from anything other than humans, and while some can eat human food, it doesn't taste very nice and it doesn't really agree with them. And Kaneki's kind of being faced with the reality that he isn't human anymore, and the only time he feels hungry is around people, even his best friend Hide. And it's really messing with him psychologically because he's always been human, he wasn't born a ghoul, and it's getting to him, and he turns to Toka for help, and initially Toka doesn't want to help Kaneki because even though he's a half ghoul, he hasn't experienced the same struggles as people who were born ghouls. But eventually the old man that helps Toka takes Kaneki in and kind of explains to him that he's looking at it from the wrong perspective. Kaneki sees it as he isn't completely human and he isn't completely a ghoul, so he doesn't fit in either worlds, whereas he's told, actually, being half ghoul and half human, you're the only person that belongs in both worlds. And this kind of changes Kaneki's perspective a little bit, but he still isn't happy with having to eat people. Even when he's given it in, pre-packaged form from the other ghouls, he can't bring himself to do it because he knows where it is, and eventually the only way they get him to eat is feeding him while he's unconscious, which Kaneki is not happy about. But apart from the slight pacing issues, I really enjoyed the first volume. Introduced us to the worlds of ghouls and humans, and how not all ghouls, there aren't really many ghouls like Kaneki that were human made into ghouls. Most of the ghouls we've been introduced to were born ghouls. And Kaneki's kind of learning how deeply these ghouls have infiltrated human society because of their human-like appearance. So I'm excited to see where that goes. It's not a long series, it's only 14 volumes, and I have seen parts of the anime, and I know a lot of stuff happens, so I don't know whether the pacing issue is going to continue, because it is a shorter series and he's trying to pack a lot into it. But I will keep you updated, obviously, as I progress through that series. I don't see it taking me longer than about a week while reading other things. And I will also be, at some point, hopefully before the end of the month, picking up the third omnibus volume of Goodnight Pum Pum, and continuing on with that, because there's only 7 omnibus volumes, and I'm almost halfway, so yeah, that's my plan. So I'm going to read probably up to the halfway mark in the Unity game, and then maybe a couple of volumes of Tokyo Ghoul today. But I'll check in with you in a bit. It's been about a week since I updated you. It's now the 1st of May, so I'm gonna just very quickly run through what I read over the rest of the month. Not gonna go too in depth because that will be more in my wrap up. But I did get to the halfway mark in the Unity game after misplacing the book for like 2 days. So I will be intending to actually finish this in May. But after I read the second omnibus volume of Goodnight Punpun, I binged read part 1 of the Chainsaw Man manga, which is volumes 1 to 11. And then that just got me on a manga graphic novel kick. So I read The Boogeyman by Matteo Salvia. Really great graphic novel, highly recommended. I read volume 1 of Tokyo Ghoul by Suyashida, volume 1 of Insomniacs After School by Makoto Ojiro, and volume 1 of Boys Abyss by Ryo Minami. These are all series that I've wanted to read for the longest time and just haven't bothered to pick them up. Then, because Chainsaw Man was so good, I obviously had to check out more of Tatsumi Fujimoto's work, so I picked up a standalone called Goodbye Eddie. Yeah, that was not as good as Chainsaw Man, but you definitely see where some of his themes come from. I then got on a major romance kick, so I read After the Rain, Volume 1 by Jun Miyazuki. Really cute age gap romance. And then I binged read the entirety of the Watakoi manga, or Love is Hard for Otaku, and I was so glad I did. The anime only adapts the first 4 volumes of the manga, and that's the 1 season of anime and the 2 OVA movies. Adapts 4 volumes, and there's 11 volumes of this, and I'm so glad I finished it because that last volume genuinely made me cry. And then the last thing I read was The Merry Dredgers by Jeremy C. Shipp for a blog tour that I have on the 5th of May. So that capped off my reading and the manga kick has continued in May. I have now started Kimetsu no Yaiba, or Demon Slayer, by Koyoharu Kotouge. I'm 3 volumes in so far. I'm literally just going to binge read the entire thing because I know the manga is completed. I have seen season 1 and 2 of the anime plus the Mugen Train movie. I'm not watching the Swordsmith Village arc anime until it's out because I do like to binge watch the season. So I will binge watch season 3 when it comes out. I do have a good idea what's going to happen, but I'm reading the manga just to make sure I don't get sucker punched in the gut like I did with the Mugen Train arc. So, yeah. So that caps off my reading month in April. A very good one, 36 books. And may it continue for the rest of the summer. But I will obviously see you in my April wrap-up. And I'm not going to do a May TBR video because mood reader, and it's killing me. But I will try and get another TBR jar vlog out, hopefully within the first couple of weeks of May, because in March and April, it didn't go well, and I now have 5 books that I picked at the TBR that I haven't read. So they are priority for this month. And I do have a blog tour for the Halfling Duology by Melissa Breyer. So that will also be coming soon. Plus, I've also picked up a few more books that have completed series. So I own Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi, and at the end of April I did buy Tales from the Cafe and Before Your Memory Fades, which at the minute completes what is available in English. So I will be reading those because they are fairly short. And then I also picked up Night Angel Nemesis by Brent Weeks. So I have read the Night Angel trilogy before I actually started blogging, and since then I have reread the first volume in that series, the first book in that series. But I didn't reread the other two, and then I learned that a 4th book was coming out, and while Brent Weeks has said you don't need to necessarily have read the original Night Angel trilogy to read Nemesis, there is a lot of information that you get from the original trilogy that doesn't make sense in Nemesis unless you've read it. So I am going back and I will reread the first book as well as the other 2 books in the original Night Angel trilogy before getting into Nemesis. Then for the Destroy Your TBR book club, I opted not to read The Last Kingdom by Bernard Cornwell, purely because it was an insanely chunky book and it's in a genre that typically I don't get on well with, which is historical fiction. Even though it had a lot of fantasy elements, not quite enough to tempt me into it. The book we are reading in May is Finlay Donovan Knocks Them Dead by Al Casamano. I loved Finlay Donovan is killing it, so I will definitely be reading that. And our book for June is another series that I own in its entirety and haven't read, which is Malice by John Gwynne, which is book 1 of The Faithful and Fallen. Now that's firmly in my zone of grimdark fantasy, so it's something I haven't picked up for a while, but I will be getting back into, so expect a lot of content to be coming your way in May, and I'll check back in with you soon.